Okay, so let's meet Samuel Richardson. I have to tell you that I'm not very fond of Pamela because she's at the first reading, she's a very naive girl, innocent girl, but she's quite sly. This means that, yes, she wants to keep his innocence. She wants to behave in a clever way, not surrounding her suitor, but in the end, she marries him. So she's probably a bit hypocritical, as she was accused of, for example, by Henry Fielding. Anyway, now let's meet Samuel Richardson. Samuel Richardson was born in Derbyshire in 1689 into a Puritan commercial middle-class family, and he worked as a printer. He was apprenticed to a printer, and then he had his own printing shop. When he was 50, so he was quite middle-aged, he was asked to write a volume of model letters to be used on various occasions by country readers, because, yes, education was not spread, so people could not read and write properly, and they needed letters for example, the lawyers, or to apply for a job, or for any sort of. And Richardson used to write very well, so he was asked to prepare a set of letters. So Richardson showed maidservant how to negotiate a proposal of marriage, apprentices how to apply for a job, and even sons how to plead for their father's forgiveness. You remember that this is a period when women could not have a proper job, they could not work. So the only, we can say, means or weapons to survive was a marriage. And a rich marriage, of course, was quite better than a poor marriage. So while he was working on this volume, he had the idea of using the epistolary technique to tell a story he had heard about a serving maid whose virtue had been unsuccessfully challenged by an unscrupulous man, Mr. B. So he started writing Pamela, or Virtue Rewarded, in 1740, which is his first epistolary novel. And he didn't expect this great success, but it was really a great success. We are going to read only one extract from Pamela, because you got only this one, although the story is quite, funny from a point of view. At the same time, it's a sort of historical page, so we can understand how girl lived at the time. Of course, the middle class characters in the novels. There's a novelty about this. The novelty is that in Richardson's work, there we can find a psychological analysis missing, for example, from Daniel Defoe's Robinson Crusoe. The reader is taken inside the minds of the characters and is invited to share their innermost thoughts, feelings, and moods. In contrast, again, to Defoe's novels, there is also a sense of individual development within the story. While Robinson Crusoe does not develop deeply during the story, or well, we can say that yes, he develops. He is the self-made man who builds his own little society on a desert island. He writes, he keeps a diary, so he addresses God, but we don't know his feelings. Well, you've read a page about comfort and discomfort, but actually we don't read his feelings. While in Pamela, we read Pamela's feelings, emotions, sadness, fears, reactions. So the development is, is a bit deeper. So the characters are far from being static, and the reader is almost a witness of their gradual development. Richardson heroines have much in common with each other. So they are young, charmful. They've got considerable self-will and knowledge, together with Christian piety. They profess and venerate truth, defend virtue, and perish when they find they are unequal to the conflicting demands of experience. I'm going to explain this. First of all, you must remember the Puritan ideals of the time, and especially of Samuel Richardson. So, of course, he wanted to teach girls how to keep their innocence, how to preserve their, how can I call it, gift, okay? And never surrender to suitors, especially before the marriage. Pamela, also Clarissa, and Sir Charles Grandison are three characters who expresses themselves and who we can say show their personality through letters. So again, Pamela is written in the form of letters exchanged between the main characters. This new type of literature was largely a reflection of the fashion for letter writing of the period, so it was really a fashion of the time, and was later to be taken up by foreign writers, for example, Jean-Jacques Rousseau in Julie ou la Nouvelle Héloïse, Goethe in The Sorrow of young Werther, which I heartily suggest you to read, and the famous Ugo Foscolo with Ultime Lettere di Jacopo Ortis, which is another wonderful epistolary novel you must absolutely read. The epistolary novel slowly fell out of use in the 19th century, especially when Jane Austen made the technique of the omniscient narrator popular, but we are going to study this next year. Why is the epistolary novel was so popular at the time, and why we can say is striking? Because it's a sort of window inside the soul of the character. Well, keep in mind that this is the age of reason, and feelings were not at all considered, because, yes, the main light to understand reality, according, of course, to the time, was reason. So the epistolary novel, we can say, is different from the other novels. Yes, I'm going to read here now. So the epistolary way chosen by Richardson uses the first-person narrative technique through personal letters and journals, and provide different individual points of view on the same event, which is fully explored. So, for example, Pamela is the story of a girl. She's a maid, she's a servant for a rich woman, and this rich woman, this rich lady dies, and when she dies, her son feels the right to seduce Pamela without any how can I say, any respect for her. He just wants sex from her, because he feels that Pamela is a sort of object of the house. He feels that after his mother's death, he has got the right to do whatever he wants with her. So we've got different points of view through the story. Pamela, who is worried about her virtue, and she writes letter to her parents. Her father is really worried about Pamela, so he answers back and he pleads her to go back home. But Pamela doesn't go back home. She likes the life in this rich house, and anyway, she was quite devoted to the old lady. So she is torn between staying in this wonderful house with all the other servants, because all the other servants are her friends, and going back home because of this rough behavior of Mr. B. So you read letters from Pamela, from Pamela's father, from Pamela's mother, and when Mr. B is quite too strong with her, because he was quite he's going to seduce her. She's really afraid, and so she leaves the house and goes back home. When she's at home, Mr. B realizes that he's in love with her, and so his tone changes. I have to go on because it's already 12 minutes, okay? So, the novel has much in common with the dramatic technique, since the characters introduce one another using letters instead of speech, and the action is made up by a series of scenes with no general summaries. Another aspect of this literary form is the immediacy. Yes, so we read immediately the feelings, the reaction of the protagonist. So the reader is invited to believe that the letters are as if they were in the very act of composition while reading them. So we feel that what we read is immediate. The key idea of the epistolary novel, or anyway Richardson novels, is the moralizing aim. He was a Puritan, and his novels reflect the Puritan middle-class scheme of reward for virtue and punishment for sins. So he avoided episodic plots by basing his novels on a single action. So in this case, in Pamela, a courtship. I'm just going to read the plot. The title of this novel is very significant. Not virtue for itself, but for what it brings about. Virtue rewarded. So Pamela is a collection of letters written by a virtuous girl to her parents who live in the country. Her letters record her various moods and feelings as she resists her late mistress's son's attempts at seducing her and gains from him as a reward a proposal of marriage, which she accepts, becoming rich and obtaining the social position that, according to the Puritan bourgeois ideal of the age, was the highest achievement in life. So, as I told you already, Pamela goes back home when the seducing attempts are too strong, and when she's at home, she receives letters from this boy, from Mr. B, who is in love with her. So probably also Pamela becomes in love with him. So probably the marriage is a marriage of love. I am quite skeptical about this, and well, I don't want you to share my same ideas. Just to finish the story is more or less a variant of the Cinderella theme. So the girl